Letting go of someone who doesn't value you is one of the deepest lessons you can learn in life. It's not just about walking away from someone, but facing an internal process that tests your self-love, your self-esteem, and your ability to connect with yourself. Carl Jung taught us that the relationships we maintain are not random, but a reflection of our inner world. The people we choose, the patterns we repeat, the emotions they awaken in us, all of this is part of an unconscious dance between our conscious self and the hidden parts of our psyche. When we stay in a relationship where we aren't valued, it's not just the other person hurting us. We are, on some level, perpetuating that cycle ourselves. Jung would call it the manifestation of the shadow. That side of us we'd rather ignore, but that remains present in every aspect of our lives. The shadow holds all those fears, wounds, and limiting beliefs we've suppressed since childhood. Often, the lack of recognition in a relationship is simply a projection of the lack of recognition we give ourselves. You might have wondered at some point why you stay hooked on someone who doesn't reciprocate your feelings in the same way. Why is it so hard to let go? Why does a part of you keep clinging to the hope that things will change? For Jung, these situations aren't random. They're revealing. You're not fighting for the other person's love. You're battling the story you've told yourself about what you deserve and how love works. Until you confront that story, you'll keep attracting the same experiences over and over again. The key to freeing yourself isn't in the other person, it's in you. It's not about making them change or waiting for recognition that never comes. It's about looking inside yourself and discovering what part of your psyche is holding on to that relationship. Maybe it's the inner child still longing to be seen, heard, and loved. Maybe it's a pattern learned at home where love was always conditional or had to be earned. Or perhaps it's a deeper belief about the fear of loneliness, that inner voice telling you that without that person, something in you will feel empty. But here's the truth. The only way to find true love is to start with yourself. Jung said that individuation, the process of becoming your fullest, most authentic self, is only possible when we integrate our shadows and face what we've avoided. Often, letting go of someone who doesn't value you is the first step toward that. When you decide to let go, you're not losing something valuable. You're reclaiming what's always been yours, your personal power. Holding on to someone who doesn't appreciate you is, at its core, a way of giving away your energy, letting your well-being depend on external factors. But the moment you say enough, the moment you choose to walk away from what doesn't nourish you, something shifts inside you. It's as if the universe responds to your decision with new opportunities, new relationships, and a new vision of yourself. The process of letting go isn't easy. Jung reminds us that the unconscious clings to what's familiar, even when it harms us. We get used to patterns of suffering because at least they're predictable. But that's where the challenge lies. Breaking from the known to open yourself to the unknown is a leap into the void, but a void that doesn't mean absence, only possibility. And here's where true transformation begins. When you let go of what doesn't value you, when you release what doesn't resonate with you, you start attracting what does. Not because the universe magically rewards you for making the right choice, but because your energy changes. Your way of relating to the world shifts. You no longer settle for crumbs of love because you've discovered there's an endless well of self-love within you. Jung said that relationships are one of the most common ways the unconscious expresses itself. What we see in others, what hurts or obsesses us, is just a reflection of something we carry inside. So when someone doesn't value us, instead of focusing on them, we should ask ourselves, how have I not valued myself? Where have I ignored my own needs? In what parts of my life have I settled for less than I deserve? These questions might feel uncomfortable, but they're necessary. Real change doesn't happen when someone else decides to treat us better. It happens when we decide to raise our own standards. And when that happens, when we truly integrate that lesson, we stop attracting relationships that diminish us. The external world is always a reflection of the internal one. Life isn't about convincing someone to value you. It's about surrounding yourself with people who already do. But for that to happen, you have to value yourself first. Not from ego, not from arrogance, but from a deep connection with who you truly are. When you see yourself with love and respect, others notice. And those who don't simply stop having a place in your life. The act of letting go isn't a punishment or a defeat. It's an act of self-love. It's telling yourself, I deserve more. And when you truly believe it, when you feel it in every fiber of your being, the entire universe aligns to prove it to you. When you decide to let go of someone who doesn't value you, a part of you might resist, not because you want to keep suffering, but because your mind is wired to avoid change. Before moving forward, I'll take a moment to tell you that my book is now available. It's full of tips and techniques to help you overcome emotional blocks and love yourself more. Find the link in the description and the pinned comment. Let's continue. Jung said the human psyche seeks balance and stability, even when that stability means suffering. That's why people stay in toxic relationships for years, because the uncertainty of being alone feels scarier than the pain of staying where they aren't appreciated. But here's the paradox. What you fear losing the most is often what you need to let go of the most. Because the fear doesn't come from the loss itself, but from the belief that without that relationship, without that person, something in you will be incomplete. And that belief is an illusion. You don't need someone else to complete you. You're already whole. What you need is to remember who you are when you're not trying to fit into a mold that doesn't suit you. The moment you decide to let go, something powerful happens. You don't just make space for something new. You send a clear message to your unconscious. You're ready to evolve. Jung said the unconscious is always trying to communicate with us, but we rarely listen. It sends us signals through dreams, intuitions, feelings, showing us over and over which relationships drain us, which situations limit us, which paths aren't aligned with our essence. But often we ignore these signals because we don't want to face the truth. The truth is that love shouldn't be a constant struggle. It shouldn't feel like a battlefield where you always have to prove your worth or justify why you deserve to be loved. Jung teaches us that true love, conscious love, can only exist between two people who've done the inner work of knowing themselves. Otherwise, what we call love is just a mix of projections, dependencies, and wounds disguised as affection. When you stay in a relationship where you aren't valued, you're trapped in an unconscious cycle. A cycle where your self-esteem is constantly at stake, where you seek approval from someone who can never give it to you the way you need. Not because they're bad or cruel, but because the recognition you're seeking isn't outside you. It's within. It's the part of you that needs to look in the mirror and say, I am enough just as I am. Letting go of someone doesn't mean hating them, wishing them harm, or erasing everything you've lived through. It means accepting that the cycle has ended, that the relationship served its purpose in your life, and that it's time to move forward. Often, the resistance to letting go comes from the mistaken idea that the time invested in a relationship determines its worth. I've been with this person for so many years, I can't just let it go. But time isn't a measure of quality. You can spend decades in a relationship that doesn't help you grow, and you can meet someone in a few months who transforms your life. The true value of a relationship isn't in how long it lasts, but in what it brings to your growth. Jung spoke of individuation as the path to wholeness. This process requires us to integrate our shadows, face our fears, and let go of everything that isn't aligned with our true essence. And on that path, letting go is inevitable, because you can't become who you truly are while still clinging to who you were. The ego will try to convince you that letting go is losing, that walking away means failing. But your soul knows the truth. Letting go is gaining space for something better. When you release someone who doesn't value you, you give yourself the chance to attract people who will. And more importantly, you give yourself the chance to value yourself without depending on external validation. We often hold on because we think if we try hard enough, if we give more love, if we're more patient, the other person will change. But Jung reminds us that we can't change anyone who doesn't want to change. Growth is an individual journey, and each person has their own pace. If someone doesn't value you today, you can't expect them to tomorrow just because you want them to. The only thing you can do is decide how much longer you're willing to wait for something that might never come. It's at this point that many feel the greatest inner conflict. They know they need to let go, but something inside still hopes for a sign, a gesture, a promise that things will get better. But time doesn't change people. Decisions do. And if the dynamic hasn't shifted after so long, it's because a pattern has already been set that's unlikely to break. The most powerful thing you can do for yourself is decide to let go without expecting anything in return. Not because you want the other person to react, not because you want them to realize what they've lost, but because you've understood you deserve better. When you choose yourself, you send a different vibration into the world, and that vibration attracts people and situations that align with your new energy. But here's where most stumble. Letting go isn't an instant act. It's not a button you press and suddenly feel nothing. It's a process, a grieving, an internal rebuilding where every day you choose again and again to prioritize yourself. There will be days of nostalgia when your mind plays tricks, recalling only the good times. There will be nights when you wonder if you made the right choice, and that's when you need to remember why you started this process. Self-love isn't built in a day. It's a daily practice. It's the choice not to settle. It's the courage to look in the mirror and recognize you're worthy of love without needing to prove it or beg for it. Jung taught us that self-knowledge is the key to freedom. And freedom isn't just doing what you want. It's having the power to choose what and who belongs in your life. Every person who comes into your life is a mirror, showing you something about yourself. If someone doesn't value you, instead of seeing it as an injustice, see it as a lesson. What is this experience trying to teach you? What part of you needs strengthening? Where have you compromised your essence to fit into a story that no longer belongs to you? Letting go doesn't mean forgetting or denying what you felt. It means accepting reality with courage, closing a door with gratitude, without resentment, but with the resolve not to reopen it out of fear or weakness. Because true love, the kind Jung described as a connection of authentic souls, can only exist when both people are whole within themselves. And if someone can't see you for who you are, then they aren't the person meant to walk with you right now. You can choose. You can keep waiting, delaying the decision, prolonging the suffering, or you can decide that today is the day you start letting go. Not to prove anything to anyone, but for yourself. Because your well-being, your peace, and your self-love are worth more than any relationship that makes you doubt your value. Remember, every time you let go of something that doesn't value you, the universe rewards you with something better. Not because it's magic, but because by changing your energy, you change how you interact with the world. And when you vibrate from self-love, you attract experiences that reflect that energy. If you're feeling pain right now, if letting go feels hard, I want you to remember this. The pain is temporary, but the transformation that follows is forever. And when you look back, when you see how much you've grown, you'll realize letting go wasn't a loss. It was the best decision you could have made. When you decide to let go, the real challenge isn't the act itself, but the internal resistance that comes after. It's that voice in your mind trying to convince you that maybe you could have done more, that perhaps you didn't give everything you had, that if you had acted differently, the other person would have valued you. But that's a trap of the unconscious. Carl Jung teaches us that attachment to what doesn't value us is just a manifestation of our shadow. That part of us afraid to face loneliness, emptiness, uncertainty. The ego wants answers, wants to close cycles with explanations that make sense of what happened. But the reality is, you won't always get an apology. You won't always get closure, because often, true closure doesn't come from the other person, but from yourself. You don't need someone to validate your pain to know it was real. You don't need someone to recognize you to know you're worth everything. What you're seeking outside is already within you, waiting to be discovered. The process of letting go isn't linear. There will be days when you feel at peace, confident in your decision, but also moments when the past tries to pull you back. In those moments, your biggest challenge is remembering why you chose to let go. Jung tells us the unconscious works through patterns and symbols. If you still feel the urge to return to what doesn't value you, it's because there's a lesson you haven't fully integrated. What really tied you to that relationship? Was it genuine love or a need for validation? Was it real connection or just fear of being alone? Society has taught us to see loneliness as something negative, as if being alone means being incomplete. But Jung shows us that loneliness is a gift, an opportunity to listen to yourself, to heal, to become whole. Because when you step away from the noise, when you no longer have external distractions tying you to dynamics that don't nourish you, that's when you can truly look within and find answers. Don't fear loneliness, embrace it. In it, you'll find the clarity you've been searching for. Sometimes the problem isn't letting go of a person, but letting go of the idea of what we thought that person represented in our life. We cling to the image of what could have been, to the good moments, to unfulfilled promises. But holding on to a story that never was only keeps you from writing a new one. Every time you choose to look back with nostalgia, every time you dive into what ifs, you're giving your power to something that no longer exists. Jung reminds us that transformation happens when we stop resisting change, when we accept that what ended had to end, that what left had to leave, and that our only responsibility is to learn from the experience so we don't repeat it. Because the real danger of not letting go isn't just the pain we prolong. It's the possibility of keep attracting the same kinds of relationships, the same lessons disguised with different faces. If you don't learn the lesson now, life will present it to you again and again until you're ready to evolve. When you value yourself, you're not afraid to let go, not because it doesn't hurt, but because you understand that what truly matters in your life will never make you feel insufficient. True love doesn't require you to shrink, to adapt, to become something you're not to be accepted. Real love is free, reciprocal, expansive. And if it's not that, then it's not love. It's a reflection of your wounds. This is where self-exploration comes in. Jung teaches us that self-knowledge is the key to breaking unconscious patterns. Why has it been so hard for you to let go? What part of you still believes it needs to prove its worth? Where did you learn that love is earned through sacrifice instead of received naturally? These questions might unsettle you, but they're necessary. The more you understand yourself, the easier it is to recognize when a relationship isn't aligned with your well-being. The key is self-observation. Jung spoke of individuation as a journey toward authenticity, and letting go of someone who doesn't value you is one of the most important tests on that journey. Because it's not just about walking away physically, it's about transforming your mindset, reprogramming your unconscious so it stops attracting what doesn't nourish you. It's about consciously choosing to surround yourself with people who lift you up instead of wearing you down in relationships that only exist out of habit or fear of change. It's normal to feel fear when taking this step. Fear is a defense mechanism of the unconscious, a way to keep you in the familiar, even when the familiar is hurting you. But here's the secret. On the other side of fear is freedom. On the other side of resistance is peace. And when you dare to cross that threshold, when you finally choose to break free from the chains holding you back, you discover that what seemed like a loss was actually a liberation. Jung spoke of synchronicity as a sign that we're aligned with our purpose. When you let go of what doesn't value you, when you release what doesn't belong to you, you start noticing things in your life begin to flow differently. New opportunities appear, people more aligned with your energy come into your life, and what once seemed impossible to overcome becomes just another lesson on your path of evolution. Every time you choose to let go, you're creating space for something better. But that space only fills when you're ready, when you've truly learned the lesson, when you no longer need to repeat the same story with different characters. Because growth doesn't happen in comfort, but in the discomfort of letting go of the old to make room for the new. Look at yourself now. In this very moment, you're not the same person you were before. You've grown, you've learned, you've evolved. And everything you've lived through, even the most painful experiences, has been part of your transformation journey. Don't regret what you've been through. Every relationship, every challenge, every fall has brought you here. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next messages. This space is a place of growth, transformation, awakening. Together, we're building a community where Carl Jung's knowledge and the wisdom of the unconscious become tools for living a fuller, more authentic life. If this message touched your soul, if you feel it's the start of a new chapter for you, share it. Because when something transforms us, we have a responsibility to share it with the world. And together we can help more people awaken, let go, and discover the immense power they carry within. Remember, letting go isn't losing. It's making space for what you truly deserve. It's choosing yourself again and again until the love you seek outside becomes the love that already resides within you. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for being part of this community. See you in the next video. And remember, the change starts with you. And here is where a new story begins. A story where you choose yourself. Letting go is trusting that the universe won't take anything away without replacing it with something better. It's having the certainty that what's truly meant for you will never need to be forced, begged for, or explained. It's understanding that your worth doesn't depend on how someone else treats you, but on how you choose to treat yourself. So if there's something or someone in your life that's made you feel small, that's made you doubt your own value, that's made you question if you're enough, today is the day you make a different choice. Today you choose to let go, not from resentment, not from bitterness, but from the deepest love you can give yourself. What's coming is far greater than what you're leaving behind. And the only way to find out is by taking the first step. Because when you finally let go of what doesn't value you, you discover you were never losing someone else. You were rediscovering yourself. Now you're someone who's understood their own power, who's discovered that the true source of love and validation doesn't come from outside, but from within. And that's one of the greatest revelations you can experience in your life. Carl Jung taught us that everything we experience in the external world is a reflection of our internal world. If until now you've attracted relationships where you weren't valued, where you felt you had to fight for love, where you gave more than you received, it's not because something in you is broken or defective, but because there was a part of you that hadn't yet recognized its own worth. And now you have. Now you understand you don't need to prove anything to anyone, that real love isn't a battle or a sacrifice, but a conscious choice between two people who see and respect each other mutually. The most beautiful part of this process is that when you let go of someone who doesn't value you, you don't just reclaim your power. You become a magnet for what's truly aligned with you. You stop wasting time on empty relationships, you stop investing energy in people who aren't ready to value you, and you start attracting people who resonate with who you are. But this only happens when you take the step to choose yourself, to close that door firmly and open yourself to the infinite possibilities waiting for you. From today, every time you're tempted to look back, remember why you started this journey. Remember everything you suffered, everything you gave without receiving the same in return, all the times you waited for things to change and they never did. And most importantly, remember who you are now. Someone who no longer needs to beg for love. Someone who's freed themselves from the weight of a story that no longer belongs to them. Someone ready to write a new chapter where self-love is the foundation of everything. Jung said life always sends us signals, but it's up to us to interpret them and act accordingly. And this is your signal. If you're hearing this message right now, it's not a coincidence. It's the universe, your unconscious, your inner self showing you the path you need to take. Don't ignore this opportunity. Don't keep postponing your well-being. Don't let fear keep you trapped in a place where you no longer belong. It's time to move forward. It's time to let go. And now I want to invite you to do something powerful. If this message resonated with you, if you feel it's touched something deep inside you, I want you to share it. There are so many people out there still trapped in relationships that make them feel small, who haven't found the strength to let go, who still believe love is something they have to earn through suffering. Help me bring this message to more people, because maybe today, right at this moment, someone needs to hear these words to take their first step toward freedom. Leave me your comment below. Tell me which part of this message connected with you, what you're willing to do to prioritize yourself, and if you've been through this process, share your story. Your experience could inspire someone, could be the light that guides another person on their own healing journey.